I am Jim Collison, and this is the Clifton Strengths Podcast Season 2, recorded on March 21st, 2023. In this Clifton Strengths podcast series, we'll look at the Clifton Strengths for Leaders report, one theme at a time, and today's theme is Arranger. If you're listening live, you don't see the chat room, there's a link to it right above me. Just click on that and join us in chat. Or if you're listening after the fact, you can always send us an email with your questions. Send it to coaching@gallup.com. Dr. Jaclynn Robinson is our host today. She works as a senior learning and development consultant and joined me for season 1 of the Clifton Strengths podcast, where we looked at well-being at work, one theme at a time. And Jaclynn, always great to be with you. Welcome back.
Thanks.
We are spending some time talking about Arranger today. Let's get started with that intro. Let's dive in.
All right. If you have a Ranger High, you can organize, but you also have a flexibility that complements this ability. You like to determine how all of the pieces and resources can be rearranged for maximum productivity.
We often think of this one, number one, just full disclosure, number one. So I'm probably going to say some bossy things about it while I'm in here today, but you can't, you can't,
Yes.
it is one of those that I think we use the term orchestrator, right? I love
Yes.
to have plates spinning. That's another, that probably doesn't translate very well, but the idea of lots of things going on, lots of things circling around, lots of activity, and it's paid off. This theme for me has paid off in leadership, and we're spending this season thinking about this through the lens of this Clifton Strengths for Leaders report, which we see many of you using more and more often, which is great. But let's talk about it in the context of a leadership role. So what do you think the power of this theme is in a leadership role?
I think with their eye towards people, processes, or even both, depending on the person, this leader can drive departments towards goals by ensuring that resources are available, communication pathways are aligned among respective teams that work together, and the right people are in the right positions.
Mm. Yeah, I like that. The right people are in the right positions.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, I think very complex or very fluid, if maybe that's a word to use, very fluid situations
Yes.
where things are changing all the time. Things are at least for me, I think there's some thrill in that of managing all those pieces. Now, for me, I have trouble remembering all of the details much longer than about 10 minutes after I've heard them. But in the moment, I can remember a lot. Like it's actually what helped me be a really good test taker when I was younger, is I could cram
Fascinating.
tons of information in. It only lasts
Yeah.
for 20 or 25 minutes. I had no comprehension on it, but I could hold it long enough to take the test, right? I'm pretty
Hmm.
sure that was that Arranger theme working for me, of remembering those details
That's so neat.
long enough, right? Long enough to get them throughout. So, um, when we think about, that's my example of how this could lead others, but
Hmm.
how else could this theme lead others?
Well, this leader can help team members identify how to manage or prioritize the various responsibilities and goals they have, since they have that efficiency lens and productivity lens. In addition, as priorities change for the overall team or department, this leader can make the necessary adjustments and inform the team,
Mm.
maintaining a relative sense of calm and stability for team members.
We spent a bunch of time, Micah and I, in season 6 of Theme Thursday, talking about sorting, how these themes can sort things. And
Yes.
it reminded me of this when you said make the necessary adjustments, or priorities, like changing priorities and that ability to quickly sort. Can you talk a little bit more about that as we kind of think about that talent? Why is that in leadership? Why is
Yeah.
that important?
It's a fascinating talent. And it's so important in leadership because there's so many different aspects of the role that they have to keep top of mind all the time.
Hmm.
If they're a senior leader, then they are really considering how their department might function with other departments, and they want to make sure the people and processes there are right. They have their own roles and responsibilities. They've got to make sure their department's hitting their roles, or not their roles, but their own departments are hitting their responsibilities. They've got to have the mission top of mind. So there's just a lot that is constantly ruminating in their heads.
Hmm.
And I think the value add of someone high in Arranger, that talent they hold, is to be able to identify the priorities in each of those different buckets, each of those different responsibilities they have. So they can, to your point, make sure all the balls are in the air and they're just kind
Yeah.
of juggling everything all at once. And it's not just juggling it where, you know, what's a good, I'm trying to think of a good way of putting this that would just translate across the way. But I would say it's one of those where they're doing it in a way that is organized and efficient. It's not
Mhm.
messy the way that they're trying to manage everything in their life. It's very efficient and organized
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
each of those priorities they have.
You said 2 words, calm and stability, when
Mhm.
you were kinda talking about this, and I think that's the beauty of this theme in teams is and in leadership, because when it's chaos, and if the leader is in chaos, everybody's in chaos, right?
Yes.
I mean, and if the leader can be in a situation, I mean, I saw this a lot when we were first starting these podcasts, 10 years ago. The technology just wasn't there. And it was really difficult to get all the pieces working together, the audience, the chat room, the
Mhm.
guests, all those things working, right? And the feedback I would always get from people when we were done is they were like, that was crazy, but you remain calm, right?
Yeah.
And so it was a situation where that calmness creates stability. We've been spending some time thinking about those four needs,
Yes.
right? We'll jump to that, and I'll just say I think when we think about hope, stability, compassion, and trust, I think a ranger brings lots of stability to these teams. When things are in chaos, they're able to bring that calmness. I don't know what
Yep.
else would you add? Thinking about that in the four needs. What else would you add to
That's
that?
a really good way of putting it. I would loop not compassion, hope into that one
Yeah.
because they're creating that sense of stability when there's a lot of change, and they can help highlight how the priorities that they're involved with, the work they have. We've got this. Let's make these changes, and this is why, and this is how it's going to impact us or the customer for the
Mhm.
better in the long run.
I always think of the analogy of sitting in the middle of a tornado, and
Hmm.
this center is calm. Things are
Yes.
just spinning around, but you're not worried about it because 'cause you're like, "I'm in the center. I know how to be here." And not just do I know how to be here, I thrive under these conditions. Like, they excite me, I'm
Yes.
motivated by
Thrills and
them.
chills.
It's weird to think I'm motivated by chaos, but it's I actually as a kid, I would mess things up. I would create chaos just so I could fix it, right? There's a
Yes.
lot of other things going on there. Let's think about how how could this theme hinder your leadership of others? Let's spend a little time on that.
Yes. I think a bit is you just tapped into for folks that don't like chaos or a lot of change. This leader feels comfortable with changing processes or priorities or responsibilities, but that doesn't mean that others on the team feel this sense of comfort. They might prefer that more predictable and orderly work life.
Yeah.
So when things do need a change, it's important, I think, for these leaders to highlight why so that others recognize this isn't just change for change's sake because this
Mhm.
person is comfortable with it, but there is a method and a reason for it.
Yeah, well, I mean, going back to the same example, I sometimes create chaos to get clarity or to fix
Yes.
it, right? Because I enjoy it. I enjoy like, "Hey, let's mess this whole thing up so we can fix it again." And that sounds restorative, but it really is this hardcore ranger loving. Once it's fixed, I'm kinda bored
Mhm.
with it. Like, I don't get a lot of I don't get a lot of, satisfaction on the fixing part. I get more
Mhm.
around the craziness right before you go to fix it. In fact, sometimes I come up with a solution, I don't even implement it. The solution's the boring part. I want the chaos of thinking through the thrill, right? The thrill of like,
Yes.
"Oh, this is gonna be awesome," and then you come up with a solution, you're like, "Yeah, whatever. Let somebody else do it." It's
Yeah.
just easier. Just a
Uh,
reminder on the report, we have these helps and hinders and then included some action items in here. This is our interpretation of it, but it's certainly how it relates to you and the other themes that are
mhm.
associated with, those that you're coaching. That this is my arranger getting very excited about this, thinking about all the things that you could be talking about in this context with someone or even yourself
Yes.
could get pretty excited. We spent some time this season thinking about how this could have some report dynamics. How could we take the Clifton Strengths for Managers report or the Clifton Strengths for Sales report and put these two together. So leaders and sales.
Hmm.
Jaclynn, as we think about that, how could we use those two together for productivity?
Speaking of arranger, how do you arrange these reports for productivity?
Exactly.
This sales leader's talent for flexibility and organization, I think, can really support them and their sales team as they're juggling just all the different aspects of a sales cycle, prospects, clients, contracts, negotiations, um, budget, sales goals. So they're quite likely to have a process that helps them keep everything running efficiently. I
Mm,
would say for their sales team, but also anytime sales members need support there, they can help them figure out a best process that might suit them based on their strengths.
yeah, and maybe overachieve in areas where the sales process is complicated or
Hmm.
where there's a large variety of
Yes.
product,
Good call.
right? And listen, this varies. I think this also varies by the other themes that are around you, in
Hmm.
this. And so, it could be a variety. I mean, even I'm a short-term arranger. In other words, I'm a firefighter. I love being in the fight, in the action. If it goes too long, I get bored and I'm like, yeah, I don't want to deal with it anymore. Right.
Hmm.
That's the way that's my focus and discipline are pretty far down. So I'm ready to move on to the next thing. I think for others, that might be different. I think this is where it
Hmm.
really comes in handy to have both reports to kinda and then
It
spend some time
does.
looking at both and thinking about them together. What about with the Clifton Strengths for Manager? If we took manager and leader and put that together, what does that look like?
Well, there's an energy that comes from improving workflows and managing processes to create better performance and efficiency for this person. So, one part of improving workflow is to ensure that team members are in roles that fit the talents and strengths they bring. And I think as a result of that just natural interest they have in what does this person do well and how can I put them in this role where it's really going to be efficient, team members feel seen for the contributions that
Mm,
they can make and bring to the
yeah.
workplace. It's like, oh, this person knows me, going back to even the way we think about engagement. For putting someone, if we're allowing someone to do what they do best every day, they feel known. A ranger is one of those types of managers that is going to have a natural eye for that typically.
Mhm. Assuming they know those individuals, when we think about
Yes.
let's talk about that for just 1 second, like,
Yes.
how do they as leader, manager I mean, what kind of things can they do to make sure they know they're who they're leading, so to speak?
They can always just come out and ask, what is it that you do
What?
with ease, excellence, and enjoyment?
Yeah.
Keyword enjoyment. We say there's things that we do really well. It doesn't mean we want to do it all the time. And we might get typecast or stereotyped
Yeah.
into that particular responsibility. So I think it's important to actually ask versus assume and check in with that person. What do you love to do? What are your best days at work look like? What is it that might drain you of your energy or might frustrate you in the workplace? And what might be some of those causal reasons so that I can support you there? So just getting really curious about that person.
Mm,
And I know that can be difficult for large teams if this is a leader, let's say, with the department of, 125 people. But those direct reports that leader has that are managing teams, getting to know their strengths. So just looking one level above or below you could be really
yeah.
helpful.
Yeah, and I think giving, you know, sometimes we make some assumptions about people or
Hmm.
they make some assumptions about themselves, but those have not been tested. And I think in this
Hmm.
leadership cycle, giving them the opportunity to test those, hey, I have these things that I like. I think I want to try them. Giving them some opportunities to try it before they buy it and
Hmm.
sometimes we come out of these engagements and we're like, oh, you should do this. And then we give them the biggest responsibility. And it's like, oh,
Time out.
yeah, like, hey, let's grow into that. There's still an experience part of this that needs to
Yes.
exist, right, in it. And knowing that, I think is the difficult part. Knowing is this right? Is this the right size
Hmm.
project or task or growing somebody in that? That's the hard part of being a leader or a manager, I think, oftentimes is it sounds great on paper,
Yeah.
but when you're actually dealing with people, a lot harder to do. So a lot of work there.
We're
Um,
complex.
Anything as we kind of wrap this one up, bring it in for a landing as we think about a ranger, how'd you put a bow on this?
Well, I'll tie in what we just talked about actually, because people are looking for learning and development or this opportunity to maybe realign or redesign their role. A ranger can be that person who leads with curiosity, asks questions. What is it that you want to do more of? To your point, maybe there's a different role or position they want to explore, and this arranger leader might have a big eye for some internal agility or movement, where another department might be able to take this person on, or they can shadow this other department. But maybe there's some internal movement that can happen within a company, or even internal movement within that person's role that can help them continue to thrive. And as an arranger, not only do they tend to have that natural knack for what people do well, but they also have an eye for what's efficient and productive. And so if it's not working, to your point, they can help them maybe cultivate the skill set so that it does work, or they can help them find the right fit.
Mm, love it. I
Yeah.
think with that,
So for your
we'll,
next one-on-one arranger managers or ranger leaders, maybe it's leading with curiosity about what that person wants to do more of. Cannot
yeah,
speak today, team.
yeah. I love it. I think with that, we'll give it a wrap. We'll want to remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have available now in Gallup Access. Head out to gallup.com/CliftonStrengths. Sign in there, hit the resources tab, put a ranger in there. Everything we've got on it to date should show up for you there. Stay up to date with all the webcasts by following us on Eventbrite, gallup.eventbrite.com. Create an account, follow us, and you'll get notifications whenever we post anything new. Join us on any social platform by searching Clifton Strengths, and thanks for listening today. If you enjoyed it, share it. Hit the like button, subscribe, whatever. Leave comments. Leave nice comments because I have to approve them.
Yeah.
And appreciate you. If you are listening live, stay around for a little bit of the mid show. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.